This is no normal speech inside Parliament. This is a political warning shot exploding in real time. $1 trillion in debt. And someone is finally saying the quiet part out loud. Pauline Hanson didn't hesitate. She pointed straight at the system and accused it of pushing Australia into a financial trap that younger generations may never escape. Rising mortgages, collapsing wages, rent through the roof, and a government spending machine that refuses to slow down. And then came the line that changed the entire tone of the debate. This is not policy anymore. This is survival. Watch what happens when the numbers stop being statistics and start becoming a national crisis.
More than a third of their income. Labor has committed many billions of dollars to improving housing supply without actually increasing it, but refuses to do anything about demand by slashing immigration. Record numbers have arrived in the past year despite Labor's promises to reduce immigration. Since 2022, Australia has experienced an 8% decline in disposable income, the biggest decline in the developed world. Real net disposable income has declined by almost $1,000 per household. More Australians than ever before, around 7% of the workforce, are working multiple jobs just to make ends meet. Australians are paying more tax too. From 2022 to 2024, under the Albanese Labor government, tax revenue per capita increased by more than $2,700. This is due to factors like inflation from government spending, bracket creep, and additional GST from rising prices of goods and services. Gross debt per capita is now more than $36,000, up from just over $33,000 in 2023. Gross debt reached an unwelcome milestone this year, tipping over $1 trillion. Government spending is around 27% of GDP, even higher than during the pandemic. Don't even get me started on the net zero disaster, which has resulted in power prices rising around 40% or more since 2022 and costing taxpayers many billions a year, much of it hidden from public view. This is not sustainable. This cannot continue. Labor has been dangling the notion of a big reform budget addressing intergenerational inequity. The hypocrisy of it is breathtaking. For the past 4 years, Labor has been robbing young Australians of their future. Labor is also now robbing retirees and pensioners of their health rebates and breaking its promise to leave capital gains tax and negative gearing alone. The exodus of investors from housing is just going to increase rents even more. Australia can do much better. One Nation has already shown the way, and this has been reinforced by the good voters of Farrer, who elected our candidate David Farley on the weekend. We've identified more than $90 billion that could be easily cut from government spending. We would put $40 billion back into Australia's pockets and pay down our crippling debt instead of bequeathing it to future generations. We will scrap net zero. This will reduce the cost of living and remove the straitjacket from our economic growth and development. We will slash immigration to reduce housing demand and ban foreign ownership to increase housing supply. Younger Australians can then look forward to a future in which they will own a home. The 18th century English writer Samuel Johnson famously said, "Resolve not to be poor. Whatever you have, spend less. Poverty is a great enemy to human happiness. It certainly destroys liberty, and it makes some virtues impracticable and others extremely difficult." What I've raised today is about the debt that this government has put us in, the whole country. They're overspent, and they keep saying to me, "Oh, well, you don't support our policies." I don't support your policies on housing because they have not worked. Yeah. You put the money into a fund, and guess what? The houses haven't been built. You've got mass migration that's coming in the country, supply and demand. Wake up yourselves. If you put good policies out there for the Australian people, you will get our support from One Nation. But I haven't seen it yet.
Spending in Australia has reached a level that critics say is becoming increasingly unsustainable, and Pauline Hanson has raised serious concerns in Parliament about what she describes as a $1 trillion debt burden now being carried by the nation, with younger Australians likely to pay the highest price in the future. The debate centers on whether current economic policies are strengthening the country or quietly shifting long-term financial pressure onto the next generation. One of the most discussed issues is the rising cost of living. Mortgage repayments have surged sharply, with full-time workers now spending around 40 to 50% of their income on housing, compared to roughly 32% in 2022. Rental prices have also increased by more than 40% over the past 5 years, pushing many renters to spend over a third of their income just to secure accommodation. This has created a situation where housing affordability is becoming a major national concern. At the same time, real disposable income has reportedly fallen, placing pressure on households already struggling with higher expenses. Critics point out that Australia has experienced one of the steepest declines in living standards among developed nations in recent years. For many citizens, this has resulted in financial strain so severe that around 7% of the workforce is now working multiple jobs just to meet basic needs. Another key concern raised in the debate is the growth of government debt and spending. Gross debt has now surpassed the $1 trillion mark, while debt per capita has climbed to over $36,000. Despite increased government expenditure in areas such as housing and infrastructure, critics argue that outcomes have not matched expectations, particularly in terms of improving housing supply and affordability. Taxation levels have also come under scrutiny, with per capita tax revenue increasing significantly in recent years. Critics argue that inflation, bracket creep, and rising costs of goods and services have contributed to households feeling financially squeezed, even as government revenue continues to grow. Immigration policy is another major point of contention in this debate. Hanson and her supporters argue that record levels of migration have increased demand for housing faster than supply can respond, placing additional pressure on an already strained market. In their view, unless demand is addressed alongside supply, housing affordability will continue to worsen. Energy policy is also part of the discussion, with claims that rising electricity prices have contributed significantly to the overall cost of living crisis. Critics link these increases to broader policy decisions that they believe are adding pressure on households and businesses. Beyond the economic data, the debate has taken on a political dimension about accountability and long-term planning. Hanson argues that large spending commitments have not delivered proportional results, particularly in housing, and that younger Australians are being left with fewer opportunities for home ownership and financial stability. The core argument being presented is that Australia is facing a structural imbalance between rising spending, growing debt, and declining affordability. As the $1 trillion debt milestone is reached, the key question being raised is whether current policies are securing the future or creating a financial burden that will take decades for younger generations to repay.